Stay tuned to the end of this video for a major channel announcement. Hey guys, Guys here. Well, it's time for you to hear my long-awaited thoughts on this one. For those of you who are new to my channel, you've probably clicked on this video, reading the thumbnail, and probably asked yourself a question. Gundam Advanced Operation? Don't you mean Gundam Battle Operation? No. You see, in this day and age, we Gundam fans are fully encapsulated by the gargantuan presence of Gundam Battle Operation, the massive third-person shooter Gundam mecha combat game, particularly the second game in the series that has been ongoing for a little over 7 years. Now, what many people don't know is that the term Gundam Operation is actually a title that's been given to a lot of other Gundam games prior to the GBO series, and today, we're going to be talking about one of the earliest of them. But first, let me talk to you about how these game entries came to be. Mobile Suit Gundam Hyper Operation was a series of small turn-based strategy games released in the early 1990s by FamilySoft. They were a series of small games intended for early home computers where players would take command of a team of iconic characters from the Gundam series and play through iconic battles and moments from the shows. Now, FamilySoft doesn't really exist anymore. However, today you can somewhat feel that this place was where a lot of these modern Gundam games got a lot of their inspirations from. Games like the SD Gundam series and Battle Operation to a greater extent. However, 3 of these entries in the Hyper Operation series that this company created are ones to really take a good closer look at. Ones with original and largely canonical events that in minor ways have impacted the UC timeline to this day, despite being so obscure and somewhat insignificant. These 3 entries being known as A Year of War, Return of Zeon, and Advanced Operation. A Year of War takes place during the 1-Year War, where the player takes command of an original cast of Zeon pilots and soldiers trying to survive the conflict, the heroes encountering characters like Amuro and Char along their journey. Return of Zeon and Advanced Operation, on the other hand, deal with the aftermath of the First Neo-Zeon War, showing off the perspectives of both the Federation and Neo-Zeon forces on Earth as the events of Char's counterattack begin to take shape, and the Second Neo-Zeon War begins to break out. Now, it's very difficult to find information about these games. However, if you've seen my other videos of Advanced Operation, that being the fan novella that I translated into a series of audio readings for you to listen to, then you've already got the gist of what it is these unique entries are about. But in this video, we're going to be doing a much needed deep dive into the one that I've already covered, this being Mobile Suit Gundam Advanced Operation. The story opens up, though, with a bit of a discrepancy, however, as the events of this story's opening act, at least in the game's description, hint at the events of the story taking place at the tail end of the year of Universal Century 0089. However, as we get closer to the actual plot, you'll notice that these events happen more in line with the timeline as being set in 0091 or 0092 even, just before the events of Char's counterattack and long after the events of Gundam Walpurgis. This game is unique, and the entire Mobile Suit roster of this game is all using suits found in another work of Gundam that my channel has covered before. That being the same mobile suits found in Kazuhisa Kondo's Revival of Zeon. Now, if you've not seen that video, I highly recommend you watch it, as the entire story does a great job at capturing the atmosphere that this game is attempting to emulate. Keyword, though, is attempting. Not only that, the events of this game, Advanced Operation, can almost be viewed as almost running parallel to the events of Kondo's Revival of Zeon, as they are so closely interconnected. This little game actually has a lot of stuff happening in it for being so small, and it's actually impressive how much they managed to get out of such a little tiny DOS game. Now that I've gotten these discrepancies and things out of the way, let's begin our journey into this forgotten little gem, with Mobile Suit Gundam Advanced Operation. All images and characters are owned by their respective companies and creators. The year is Universal Century 0092. Notice the little asterisk right there. At this point in time, the Federation is beginning to escalate its military operations on the Earth. Vast quantities of Neo-Zeon holdouts remain on the planet after the First Neo-Zeon War ended in Federation and HGUC victory. However, an enigmatic figure has begun to resurface following the scattering of Neo-Zeon, Char Aznable, After the death of Haman Karn, the forces of Neo-Zeon have been scattered and divided by the Neo-Zeon civil war that ensued between Haman Karn's loyalist forces and Glemitoto's Neo-Zeon insurrectionists. Out of this chaos, two major internal factions had been formed: the Neo-Zeon Moderates, a faction within the forces of Zeon that seeks to reconcile with the Federation to achieve mutual peace through cooperation, as well as the Neo-Zeon Hardliners, a larger faction that still seeks to destroy the Federation and seeks the liberation of the colonies through armed conflict. The standard Zeon affair. At this point in time, with the return of Char on the horizon, the Hardliners have all fanatically begun rallying under his banner, and have largely ousted these moderates, as Zeon begins to take actions to bring about its next major movement. But out of this turmoil, another, smaller voice is making a desperate play. The moderates, led by the one and only Serrana Karn. Yes, the younger sister of Haman is still alive at this point in time, following the events of Gundam Walpurgis, if you look at things chronologically, and is aiming to prevent Char's future regime from launching a new war against the Earth. The only problem is that her Zeon moderates are vastly outnumbered at this point by Char's growing forces, and she has come to believe that this man's aims have to be stopped before it's too late. Thus, she has moved to attempt peace talks with the Federation government. Her former position within Axis as their foreign affairs minister is being used as her bargaining chip to get herself into talks with the Federation higher-ups. And to top it all off, and the thing she's betting on, she has managed to garner the support of a high-ranking officer within the Federation military, a former Karaba general by the name of Manov, who sympathizes with her people's plight and is now working with her to establish a diplomatic solution to the threat of Char's rising power. The story of Advanced Operation, however, takes us right to the tipping point of this crisis, though. Serrana Karn's forces, after Char Aznabel's hardliners learned of the woman's plans to meet with the Federation officials to discuss peace terms, have intercepted Serrana's rendezvous shuttle with the Earth. As her Komusai prepares to enter the atmosphere, the hardliners are making their move, and are now attempting to silence Serrana before she can make any arrangements with the EFF. Serrana's Komusai and Zaku 3 escort squadron is attacked brutally and pursued by a squadron of hardliner mobile suits, these being a squadron of specialized variants of DOMs. The game calls them the DOM Pluses, and I will continue to use that name going forward. Her Zaku 3s manage to hold them off long enough for her shuttle to make planetfall, all of them being destroyed as they protect her. Unfortunately, during this fight, her own shuttle is knocked severely off course by their attack. Serrana, though, throughout all of this, is actually completely fine, it would seem. In fact, she actually anticipated an attack like this occurring from Char's more loyal fanatics. She's managed to even deduce who it was that Char Aznabel has even sent to kill her. And it turns out, it's a Neo-Zeon officer that we've actually met before, one that we actually haven't seen in a very long while, this being a major by the name of Gerald Sinclair. Fun note, Serrana Karn and Gerald Sinclair are actually both characters found in Char's deleted affair. However, this game is actually the very first Gundam story that ever introduced them. Advanced Operation was created in 1992, and we wouldn't see Serrana for another 9 years before her reintroduction in CDA. As for Sinclair, in the events of the CDA manga, Sinclair was very close with Char Aznabel. The two were old buddies on Axis, and he's been very loyal to Char, almost to a fault. You see, one of the things you need to know about Gerald is that a long time ago, he was simply a Zeon cadet. He fled to Axis after a Bawa coup fell, like so many other Zeon remnants. However, his father was one of the officers who stayed behind in the end of the conflict and surrendered the Zeon homeland to the Federation. However, it was found out later by him that Federation spies assassinated his father after the Granada Treaty was signed. To this day, Sinclair sees Char as the only friend he has left. Haman was quite cruel and often sidelined him during the First Neo-Zeon War, himself developing a grudge against Haman that spiraled into his now burning anger towards Serrana, who now seeks peace with the Federation, who he views as the reason his father is dead. He wants his vengeance, and Serrana is preventing that. Out of the entire force that pursues Serrana through the atmosphere, Sinclair is the one to lead the assault on her shuttle. along with two of his wingmen subordinates, Meyer and Geisen. However, with the Zaku 3 escorts preventing them from destroying their target, the man has been forced to pursue her on the surface of the Earth. Now, this is more or less the prologue to this tale. Serrana plays a major role in the overall events, however, surprisingly this story doesn't have her as a central focus. Rather, this story gives us an all-new cast of characters to follow, ones that I'd like to briefly introduce to you right now. Down on Earth, we turn to a familiar place, one that hasn't been seen in a long time. This being Odessa. After the One-Year War, it would seem, Odessa, the site of the largest mobile suit land battle in history up until this point, has seen a massive facelift. Being the site of one of the One-Year War's greatest battles, Odessa has been turned into one of the Federation's largest military training academies. Students come from all over the Earth sphere to receive their military educations at the massive aviation academy that's now been erected at the memorial site of the battle. The main story begins with the introduction of one of our two main characters, this being a pilot cadet by the name of Adel Arishem. He flies through the sky in a small training aircraft above the airbase. Despite being a cadet at this school, he doesn't actually have the desire to become a full-on soldier. Rather, the Odessa Aviation Academy actually offers a sub-program to train future Coast Guard pilots for the Earth Federation Navy and its other search and rescue services. We learn that Adel's father was a Saberfish pilot during the One-Year War, and after his father's death in said war, he aims to use the training at the academy to do something more noble with the piloting skills his father has passed down to him. Growing up, though, his mother had him be very sheltered, and it took much convincing for him to get out of the house so he could make a career out of this whole military education thing. Nonetheless, he's an excellent pilot like his father, and after his latest training exercise, he aims to celebrate with his other classmates. But as he begins making landing procedures at the airbase, something catches his eye. A massive Federation warship is descending, and is coming to the base. He's given new orders by one of his colleagues to go ahead and use the smaller runway, as the massive ship is coming down and needs all of the space so that it can land. This ship is the Elnido, a Pegasus Kai class warship belonging to Brigadier General Manov. Side note, and I find this really interesting, General Manov is the only officer within the EFF that I have ever seen who wears this. A solid dark red Federation officer's uniform. I don't know what the significance is, but it's really cool looking. And I will mention this about Manov. It's implied by the dialogue we get about this guy that he is one of the earliest founding members of Londo Bell, himself being right up there with Captain Bright Noah and the Earth Federation official known as John Bauer. This man has been here since the formation of the entire task force and serves as one of the top Federation military diplomats in the entire military. As the ship comes down, we are introduced to a side character, the control tower operator at the airbase by the name of Claire Brownie. She's a fellow student along with Adele, however she's a senior and is much older in comparison to the other students. Nonetheless, Adele thinks she's a very nice person. Adele makes his landing, and we're finally introduced to this story's other main character, a girl by the name of Raisa Crescent. Raisa is actually the character we focus on the most in this story, and the majority of the fan novella delves into her perspective of this story's events. Nonetheless, it's important to look at Adele and Raisa as being the co-main characters of Advanced Operation, as the vast majority of the story follows the events that play out from both their perspectives. Now, who is Raisa Crescent? Well, Raisa is kind of the opposite when it comes to character archetypes when you compare her to Adele. She's a straight-A overachiever, she's fairly popular in the classroom, and unlike Adele's more reserved and almost pent-up angst, she's a lot more open and is totally fine with calling out people's bullshit. I like to think of Adele and Raisa's relationship as being similar in comparison to that of something like Camille and Fa, or Jidoashita and Ruluka. Their relationship is a bit of both of those archetypes mixed together. However, their emotional relationship doesn't fully kick off until the second half of the story. At this point in time, Raisa is actually dating another classmate, a popular student by the name of Burner Simon. Burner's a bit of a jerk though, as their status as a couple is merely a classroom drama kind of thing. Now, out of the entire class, Raisa is also the most skilled pilot, it would seem. Being the overachiever that she is, Raisa aims to become a decorated Federation officer and mobile suit pilot. She even aspires to join the ranks of Londo Bell, it would seem, and serve alongside her childhood idol, Amuro Ray. As the story continues, days pass. The Elnido has landed and has been docked at the base on standby, it would seem. Raisa being enamored with the cruiser as it's just like the White Base from the One-Year War. However, she and Adel soon get into an argument about the Federation and Zeon, as Adel, growing up, saw both sides of the conflict as being in the wrong. The Federation sent his dad to die, and Zeon were the ones who ended up killing him, with him interestingly seeing the rhetoric of Haman Karn as the only sane thing he's ever really heard before. Nonetheless, that leaves Raisa to argue with him over the fact that Haman still dropped a colony on the Earth, it would seem. During this time, we're also introduced to the other members of the cadet program. Orvis Boa, the gentle giant of the class, seeking to become another member of Londo Bell with his excellent martial arts skills. Senri Suzuki, the class bookworm, who aims to use his pilot training to become a commercial airline pilot for the Colony Corporation. He's also studying to be an engineer. And Doug Nielsen, another student of the Search and Rescue program who sits in the same class with Adele. Each of these students has wide-eyed aspirations about what they want to do in life. However, things are about to change. Adele is woken up by Raisa to the sound of the base's alarms, the two getting on their pilot suits. The airbase is under attack. The Elnido and the entire Aviation Academy is under siege by Neo-Zeon forces who are aiming to destroy the docked Pegasus vessel. This force being led by none other than Gerald Sinclair, who has managed to find out that Serrana was secretly last sighted at this facility. The base is thrown into chaos. Civilians are caught in the crossfire as Zeon Dom Pluses led by Gerald's specialized Beretta mobile suit assault the facility and devastate the base's entire complement of Gym 2s that were simply being used as training units for the students. General Manov manages to get the message out to his ship's Mobile Suit Combat Corps to deploy, but not before the bridge of the Elnido is struck with a bazooka round from the Beretta that manages to blow a hole in the entire side of the bridge. Manov being crushed under the wreckage as the bridge explodes. The cadets, seeing as escape is impossible, with the Zeon suits attacking the base and killing civilians and students left and right, Raisa sees as this is the only chance they have to try and help, albeit to the others' concerns over a bunch of cadets going into actual combat. Nonetheless, she does manage to get the 6 of them out there with her. Managing to make it to the hangar bays, the class of cadets all manage to launch into the skies in their training fighters to help the base fend off the Zeon attackers, seeing as the defense of the place is failing due to the assault from Gerald's Beretta. Now, you might be thinking that these training fighters are just that, training fighters. However, these fighters are a little bit more than just trainers. Let me introduce you to the Tangram. These training fighters belong to the Academy. However, there's a greater purpose behind their existence. The Tangram Trading Fighter is a fighter craft intended with the purpose of training future pilots of Wave Riders. Yes, these little snub fighters are tiny, non-transforming versions of the Zeta Gundam. They are tiny Zeta Plus Wave Riders whose purpose is to train pilot cadets on how to control the basic flying functions of a transformable mobile suit. Not only that, but this training academy also has something secret it's working on, the reason why they have these fighter craft to begin with. The Odessa Aviation Academy was secretly developing its own variant of the Zeta Gundam, it would seem, specifically designed for the use in maritime search and rescue. Yeah, a Coast Guard variant of the Zeta Gundam. We're not going to see this variant of the Zeta Gundam in the story get used right now. However, I find it extremely cool that the Federation is considering a Zeta for use in its non-military branches of service. It's super cool to think about. Now, during this whole battle, we're introduced to the 2 lead pilots belonging to the Elnido, these being a pair of One-Year War veterans by the names of Lieutenant Gary and Lieutenant Leopard. Gary is a grizzled survivor of many battles, whereas Leopard is more or less the light-hearted companion who was surprisingly mentored by Gary. The two form this buddy cop duo that really shows off there are still some great soldiers within the EFF's ranks who aren't members of Londo Bell. Gary is actually really important to the story, at least emotionally for the rest of the cast, as he largely serves as a mentor figure for all of the cadets in the beginning. As the battle breaks out though, he and Leopard are the only two pilots from the Elnido left though, it would seem. The entire second half of their mobile suit force was killed in the opening strikes on the base, and not even in battle. They were killed as they were resting in the barracks. One of the first missile strikes on the Academy obliterated them as they were sleeping there. Now, luckily, they do have one suit amongst them that is doing well to hold off the Zeon forces, this being the suit commanded by Gary, a Gundam Mark II B-type. This unit was first introduced in the revival of Zeon. It's nowhere near the same level of power as the original Mark II, as most of the B-Type's components can be traced more or less back to the Gym 3. However, the fact there is a Gundam still putting up a fight as this place falls apart is a small blessing. Leopard himself is commanding his own unit in this battle too, a slightly custom-painted Gym 3, which still sports his former HGUC color scheme from back when he fought in the day. The unit they are up against in this battle, though, is an extremely dangerous opponent, the unit being commanded by Sinclair, the PMX 005 Breda. Despite the ID code insinuating that this unit is a creation of Paptimus Scirocco, this unit is really anything but. This machine was fully Neo-Zeon developed, from data collected by the Neo-Zeon built the O2 mobile suit, and it is an extremely highly tuned piece of equipment when it comes to a Commander mobile suit. It serves almost along the same lines as something like the Yak Doga, minus the funnels, and the unit is giving the two aces of the Elnido a run for their money. The Breda is extremely fast and agile for being so bulky, so much so that Gary's Mark II is even having trouble keeping up with it. Nonetheless, he's giving the Breda as much power as he can give it as the entire Academy burns. Down on the ground, as the cadets and the two aces begin to fend off the Zeon assault, with the Tangram fighters landing pot shots at the Doms and even the Breda itself, we finally get introduced to this game's last core character, this being the now captain of the Elnido, a former Federation officer turned Academy instructor by the name of Captain Kelly Schneider. Think of him as a discount Captain Bright, minus all the slapping. Nonetheless, he and the aforementioned control tower operator Claire manage to make their way onto the damaged bridge of the Elnido and find a severely injured General Manov, who gives Kelly the order to captain the ship and get everyone out of there as the school begins to fall. After managing to scoop up some of the stranded civilians along with a mysterious girl by the name of Jessica Fletcher, the cadets manage to fend off the battle-hardened Zeon forces long enough for the Elnido to make it out to the sea. Manov then gives Kelly the order to have all the cadets and the two aces on the ground return to the ship at once. As the entire Odessa Academy burns, the cadets make it back safely. However, Sinclair watches on in anger, as he finds it hard to fathom that he let the damn ship escape, the Elnido blasting at his Breda with its main guns as the ship makes a break for it out to the water. Once on board, the cadets are greeted by Quaker, the Elnido's chief of engineering, who gives them all an angry lecture about their reckless flying, with Gary commending their actions, as even though they were simply more or less a distraction, they still helped them protect the school and all of those trying to evacuate. Nonetheless, Kelly comes down and gives all of his students the unfortunate news he's received from the Federation via their communications. The Odessa Aviation Academy is lost. The school was almost entirely destroyed in the battle, and now they have to take whatever refugees they have with them to another Federation base where they can be tended to, that's hopefully safely out of Neo-Zeon's reach, as more and more Neo-Zeon activity is beginning to get increasingly hostile, it would seem. The only hope they have right now is a Federation airbase located in Algiers, and even worse, unfortunately for them, with Zeon forces pursuing their vessel, and with the actions they took in the battle to protect the school, they all have been forcibly conscripted into the EFF as of this moment. The Earth Federation, everybody, recruiting child soldiers since 0079. Every single one of the 6 students is terrified. Adele even pulls a play out of Amuro Ray's playbook and tries to refuse, but there's no way they can. Everyone on board the ship is either a student or a civilian refugee from the school who hid out from the attack inside the vessel. And with the Elnido's Mobile Suit Corps reduced to merely 2 members, they have no choice but to fight. Nonetheless, all of the cadets are given the remaining Gym 2s on board the Elnido, as the ship still had them in the bay when the school was attacked, with Raisa Crescent herself being given a spare unit of Mark II B-type that lost its pilot in the opening attack, unfortunately. Raisa herself is chosen to command it, as she is the cadet with the most simulator time logged in out of the entire group of cadets, and is regarded by everyone in the group as the best pilot of the 6 of them. Adel himself is extremely apprehensive about piloting a mobile suit, as it's not what he signed up for. However, nonetheless, he joins to make sure everyone gets to the Algiers base safely. Along the way, as the Elnido makes its way to Algiers, they actually stop at a Federation supply port in Cypress. However, upon arrival, the refugees are refused by the base, as not so far away, the port has been recently suffering frequent cargo raids by a Xeon remnant submarine base located somewhere off of the coast. Luckily, the cadets and everyone are still given a moment to rest and recollect themselves. Adele and Doug are even introduced to Jessica Fletcher, who is spending her time largely tending to the wounded students. The 2 of them immediately notice how different she looks compared to the other refugees. Her skin shows signs that she's a space noid, and we get to learn a little bit more about how it is that Adele views the space noids and Xeon as a whole. Adel Arishem, despite losing his father, always saw the One-Year War as more of a tragedy than anything. During the Grips War, he saw what the EFF was devolving into and saw the AUG and Axis as more in line with his personal values. Nonetheless, he fights right now with the Federation because out of this whole mess, he's simply looking for a way to survive like all of the others. We also get a little bit of details about Raisa and Burner as well out of this scene, as it seems their relationship is having a bit of a falling out now since the school has been reduced to ashes. Burner is popular with the other ladies in the class, but his relationship with Raisa is solely based on that popularity. With the school being gone and his reputation growing extremely thin in their small group, as he continues to act like a jerk to everyone, it's then that Captain Kelly, being a teacher, he feels as though he has a moral obligation to keep all of his students safe and get them out of this conflict as soon as possible. This choice from the higher-ups to have his students be enlisted is one that doesn't sit well with him at all. Nonetheless, Claire Brownie motivates him to get them all to the Algiers base safely. However, things don't get a chance to go further as the Cypress base is suddenly attacked. You see, after Gerald Sinclair failed to destroy the Elnido, he contacted a shadowy individual in the Xeon remnants, requesting them to intercept the cruiser at the Cypress base. The person that was sent is a Xeon naval officer by the name of Colonel Newman. His forces are the ones who've been attacking Cypress's convoys already, as he sees going after the ship is utterly pointless. Nonetheless, he complies with this request from his mysterious superior, and he and his forces attack the supply base directly with a force of aquatic mobile suits from their submarine fleet. Old retrofitted Hygogs and Zagoks attack the small supply base, slipping past the base's underwater minefields and aircraft carriers, cutting the base's Gym 3s and Aqua Gyms down with ease as they force their way into the tiny cargo facility. Newman himself trying to go after the Pegasus cruiser with his retrofitted and customized Hygog. The Cypress Defense Force's Aqua Gyms, who, mind you, deployed via base jabbers to intercept them directly, are largely and immediately taken out by Newman's Hygog and his other aquatic machines the moment they touch the water. Now, during this battle, the cadets take up their Gym 2s for the first time, with Gary taking Adele and Raisa to defend the main ship, while Leopard and the others deal with the main force currently raiding the central supply base. Adele manages to kill an old Hygog. However, they soon encounter Newman, who manages to get the upper hand on the kid and almost kills the cadet with his machine. A cadet who, mind you, has only trained on planes and a GM canard at best when it comes to mobile suits. However, to his luck, Gary comes in to save his life. The Mark II and Newman's Hygog get into a vicious clash, but seeing as this hastily staged attack is being thwarted by the intervention of the Mark II and the realization that his forces have overextended themselves raiding the supply base itself, Newman gives the order to his forces to fully retreat, himself fleeing into the water with his Hygog and sinking beneath the waves. With the heroes managing to recover from this sudden attack, Adel and Raisa brush each other off, but we unfortunately lose one of our heroes at the end of this fight, this being Gary. Lieutenant Gary, during his fight with Newman's Hygog, managed to have a stray micromissile round get lodged in his Mark II B-Type's hip, the micromissile landing right between the armor joints, but not exploding. This round, thought to be a dud, didn't go off until moments after the battle, with Gary still inside. The man whom all these cadets were starting to look up to and was congratulating the cadets on surviving their first encounter with these skilled combatants is suddenly and instantly killed in the ensuing explosion as his poor Mark II is turned to scrap by the lodged missile. Everyone grieves his loss on the ship. Gary was the best pilot on the Elnido. Leopard was best friends with him since the One-Year War, and losing his own mentor makes him so distraught with the loss of him that unfortunately, Kelly and Quaker deem him as ill-suited to lead the cadets in the future, as this is too heavy of a loss for him. This unfortunate event also results in Raisa Crescent being promoted to squad leader, much to the disagreement of herself and everyone. A day passes, and the Pegasus Kai flies through the air, the cadets leaving a bouquet of flowers back at the Cypress base for old Gary, as they still have to get these civilians to safety. Raisa and Burner, though, get into a fight about their relationship, and she finally has to cut him loose. Raisa then is met by Jessica, who's surprisingly been allowed to come onto the bridge and fills in as the ship's communications operator. Raisa, though, suspects that Jessica is hiding something, as the woman isn't dressed like a crew member and is always seemingly asking about General Manov, it would seem. She's always asking the officers if she can speak with him, even though they are clearly in a state of crisis, even though she, a civilian, doesn't really have the authority to go around barking orders on the ship. The Elnido flies for a ways until they finally receive a signal from the Algiers facility. They've made it. However, something is off about the signal when they get it, causing Jessica to freeze in fear as she gets the transmission and sees the readings. They have unidentified fighters approaching them. Not only that, it soon becomes worse. They're Neo-Zeon mobile suits, Sturm Jaegers, modified captured Zeon Gaplants are coming in fast from the direction of the former Algiers facility. And not only that, Zeon Gaff artillery mobile suits are also on the ground taking well-aimed shots at the Pegasus from the desert shoreline below. Launching into the air on base jabbers, the cadets once again are attacked by forces under the orders of Sinclair. However, strangely, he's not present in this fight. Nonetheless, the heroes are forced to abandon their objective and head north away from the North African facility to hopefully meet up with any Federation forces in Europe who can help them. In this aerial battle, Raisa and Adel's bond is further cemented. They work incredibly well as a team, the two of them working together to down Gaplant after Gaplant as the enemy suits attempt to take out the Pegasus in the skies. Manov gives the order to have the ship alter its course as the entire ship is once again taking heavy fire and has gotten confirmation on the status of their botched rendezvous with the base. The team has no choice but to head north. The only path now is to head into Federation-controlled Central Europe and pray they can get some much-needed help. Time passes once again, and the ship is forced to land in Barcelona, after the Gaplants pummeled their ship's engines. The ship landing in the densely wooded forests to hide from more of their Zeon pursuers. The ship still occasionally having to defend itself against stray troops that they keep on encountering. However, to their weariness, they surprisingly receive some aid right away. They spot a Medea transport on their sensors. This Medea as well is fleeing from the Zeon troops. This transport, actually, is one the Federation had sent back to the Odessa facility to go retrieve some important materials that were caught up in the attack on the school. However, thanks to the scheming of Gerald Sinclair's secretive associate, Gerald's forces have found it first, and the transport has become heavily damaged after engaging another series of Gapland fighters. The transport billowing smoke as the two vessels meet up as the fighters withdraw at the very sight of the Elnido cruiser. As they receive supplies from the Medea and instructions from General Staff HQ, all given to them by a delightful and snarky officer by the name of Dolce, the two ships quickly form an alliance so that they can make it to a Federation-controlled area safely. However, just as they try to figure out what to do next, and the crew of the Medea is forced to transfer their supplies to the Elnido, as their own ship is no longer capable of protecting itself, Gerald Sinclair's forces ambush them again. However, to everyone's surprise, all of his forces are taken down out of nowhere by an unsuspecting face. Jessica Fletcher, the civilian that tagged along with our merry band since Odessa and had been helping out on board the cruiser, immediately sees the pings on the radar of Gerald's forces moving to attack them. She goes right to the cargo that's being transferred over to the ship and commandeers a mobile suit. And with it, she takes to the skies and single-handedly destroys the entire force of mobile suits along with Sinclair's own Bretta, Jessica thwarting the entire ambush by downing several machines in the skies above. It is after, as the smoke clears and Sinclair finally retreats, that Raisa and our band of cadets learn the truth about this mysterious woman. Jessica Fletcher is in fact Serrana Karn, the entire reason that their ship has been pursued all this time by Neo-Zeon forces is because Gerald Sinclair is fully aware that Serrana has met up with the Earth Federation. He even found out that she was at the Odessa base and that Manov's vessel was supposed to meet up with her in secret at the school. But it wasn't until she got to the base that it was attacked by Sinclair, who intended to ambush their meetup at the Aviation Academy before she could even speak to him. Serrana Karn, formerly Jessica, seeing the danger of Sinclair ambushing these poor cadets and them being forced to fight for a fourth time, manages to sprint over to the cargo transfer as the Elnido and the Medea that's landed and has taken up arms in a mobile suit that the transport was intended to take to Federation Command. A suit, you might have guessed, was the one the Medea was sent to retrieve. What mobile suit is that, you might ask? It's the Zeta Gundam, the MSZ-007C Zeta Gundam to be exact, the unit that was intended to become the search and rescue machine for the Academy. However, the suit never finished its development at the school, and its search and rescue equipment was never even given the opportunity to be attached. Instead, this Zeta Gundam currently is solely made from the parts that the Aviation Academy requested to be used to help deliver the performance it needed for its missions. This Zeta is still combat capable, and it still wields its weapons. However, despite being a Zeta Gundam at first glance, there's actually something more to it. The Zeta 7C type actually uses a lot of parts from mobile suits that you wouldn't expect to go well for a standard Zeta Gundam when it came to cross-compatibility. Its wing binders are much smaller, it would seem, its beam rifle simplified. The cockpit hatch is entirely exposed with open glass, and most importantly, since it's a little hard to see from the line art, it uses the forearms and legs of a HGUC Shiki, with the Zeta Gundam's boosters thrown on over top with some additional Zeta-style armor coverings. The Zeta 7C is a suit that can be best described as a part swap downgrade. Nonetheless, it's still a Zeta, and it's still extremely effective in combat, especially in the hands of Serrana Karn, who, mind you, chronologically has already flown the Demeter, the suit that was intended to replace the Cubile. Now, I could go on about this for hours. This Zeta Gundam is honestly one of the coolest things I think this story introduces. The fact the Federation saw both the HGUC Shiki and the Zeta Gundam as being both useful when combined into a single machine is honestly incredibly impressive. Not only that, they intended the suit to be used by their Coast Guard. That's crazy. And the coolest part of all of this, Serrana Karn is piloting it. Yes, the two suits that Haman Karn hated the most have been merged together and are now being used by her sister, the woman who constantly tried to convince Haman to not do evil things. It speaks leaps and bounds of Serrana Karn's character development over the course of the entire timeline as a whole. She takes that Zeta Gundam out into the air, and the entire crew of the Elnido watches in awe as this girl solos an entire aerial mobile suit force led by Sinclair single-handedly. It's insane. After the battle is over and Sinclair is forced on the retreat, we finally get to learn what the plan was for Serrana. She's confronted by Raisa upon her return, and she once again asks to be taken to Manov's medbay room. There, we learn from their conversation the truth about Serrana's plans. When they opened the door, the military doctor offered a few words of caution to Manov, who was lying in bed before bowing and leaving the room.
Serrana Karn, Deputy Foreign Minister. Is that correct?
Yes.
The woman who answered bore no form of resemblance to the gentle Jessica Fletcher. She was sharper, more refined, like the cold water of winter. Adele glanced at her, wondering whether her gentle demeanor or her commanding presence as a Zeon leader was her true nature. But it was an unanswerable question. Serrana responded and then took a seat on a small round chair beside Manov's bed, as if paying her respects. Kelly and the others standing behind her.
Deputy Foreign Minister, Serrana Karn, it seems we've both been humiliated.
Indeed. While we've been idle, the situation has been steadily deteriorating dangerously.
I hear the Zeon hardliners are rallying under that Char fellow.
Raisa and Kelly, who were observing the conversation, couldn't hide their surprise at the mention of Char's name.
But Char's supposed to be dead!
At the very least, he went missing during Operation Maelstrom.
Serrana turned and shook her head sadly.
Char is not dead, nor is he missing. He's alive, and he's aiming to become the new leader of Neo Zeon.
For Adele, this was shocking news, but as someone who leaned towards the Spacenoids, it was also understandable.
Char has given up on the HGUC. He believes they can't reform the corrupt Federation government. He thinks he has to do it himself. Is this why he's reorganizing Neo Zeon?
Serrana agreed with that assessment.
That's correct, but Char is dangerous. He wants to purge the Earth. No one has the right to do such a thing. Char told me himself, humanity has reached its limit. But what will happen to the dying Earth if he carries out such an act?
Adele, who had felt some sympathy for Char, was at a loss for words. But Raisa spoke up, echoing his thoughts.
There's no way a world like that could endure.
Serrana nodded at Raisa and Adele.
And after a decade since the one-year war, society is exhausted and lacks the strength to create a new era. Even if Char uses force to carry out this purge, it won't lead to human evolution. Even if it did, becoming new types won't guarantee a peaceful and prosperous society. If that were even possible, my sister, Haman, wouldn't have started a war or died for it.
It was a sad truth, but it was the reality.
In the end, all that will remain of his purge are the nameless corpses of countless innocent people. That's why we must stop Char. As above all, a world where death is so commonplace is unnatural.
When Serrana finished speaking, silence fell. It was a sign that Adele and Raisa had understood her words. Serrana turned back to General Manov.
Brigadier General Manov, there's still time to prevent the Zeon hardliners' plans.
What's your basis for that?
Char has only gained the support of a fraction of the hardliners as of now. He hasn't yet secured full control of Zeon. That's why he's calling himself Casval Daikun, claiming to be the son of Zeon Daikun, the rightful leader, to gain the people's support in his aims.
Casval Daikun? That's an unfamiliar name. So he's aiming for a military dictatorship under the guise of democracy?
Yes, but if we can establish peace now between the Federation and the Zeon moderates, the hardliners' support base amongst the people will be weakened. You know the people are tired of fighting.
After listening to Serrana, Manov quietly closed his eyes. The exhausted people, hoping for a way out, would seek a young leader to accept the temporary spectacle of war. Having lived a long life, Manov could see things that Serrana Karn, a 20-something deputy foreign minister, could not. But Serrana Karn had declared that a society where so many people died was abnormal. It was a naive statement, but it was absolutely correct. If so, there was only one thing to do. He slowly opening his eyes. Manov turned his head on the pillow to face Serrana. With a theatrical pause, like a kabuki actor striking a pose, he spoke with a strength that belied his severe injuries.
Deputy Foreign Minister. I will assist you to the best of my ability. Captain Kelly, contact the Central European base in my name. Arrange for negotiations to begin as soon as we arrive.
Thank you.
Serrana bowed deeply. After this meeting, our little band of heroes see the direness of the situation. They adjust their course and travel to the Central European military base of the Earth Federation forces located in Hamburg, Germany. However, as they travel there, we also see what Sinclair's next moves are. After failing a second time to silence Serrana, Sinclair meets with an aging Zeon admiral, one who was left behind on Earth all the way since the One-Year War, and surprisingly, through his sharp wit and manipulative actions, has managed to carve out a massive chunk of territories for himself and the Zeon remnants after all of these past wars. The man's name is General Torr, and it turns out he's been in contact with Sinclair when it comes to this whole situation with Serrana. Torr is the mysterious man who originally dispatched Colonel Newman to attack the Cypress port facility, and had his Zeon remnant allies seize the Algiers facility. Now, the one thing that makes Torr such a massive threat is that he actually sees this whole conundrum with Serrana as a personal threat to his position of power within the Zeon remnants on Earth. General Torr is essentially the current supreme commander of the Zeon remnants on Earth, and the fact that Serrana Karn is moving to try and secure peace with the Federation does not spell well for his territory and the lucrative illegal resource mining operations he's been conducting in the shadows of the Federation-controlled European continent. He summons Sinclair to his private quarters and gives him a data disk, containing something he and all the Zeon remnants have received in recent days, something he thinks the man can use to take down Serrana if she tries to spill the beans to the Federation. He's even offered to give him an illegal means of getting Sinclair into the Federation Central HQ without getting himself shot. Upon the hero's arrival at the HQ Center, Serrana has a lengthy meeting with the high-ranking officers of the Earth Federation forces, explaining the entire situation of the power struggle within the Zeon ranks and how Char Aznabel's rise is to be seen as a threat to the very future of humanity, with his plans to commit a new attack on the planet Earth. As this happens, Raisa and Adel wait outside in the evening air of the base, the two of them beginning to show signs of wanting to tell each other about how they feel towards one another, now that they've finally reached safe haven. However, all of this comes to a head when they soon learn that Sinclair is actually at the base. As the Federation officers discuss the things Serrana said to them when it comes to Char, they are met by Sinclair in secret, who uses Torr's backroom credentials to meet with them, and he delivers them a message he wants them all to hear. The data disk he was given by Torr contains a recorded message from Char Aznabel himself, a message directed to all Zeon remnant forces still on the planet.
My comrades fighting on Earth, I am Char Aznabel, as the inheritor of my father, Zeon Daikun's will, and the rightful leader of Neo-Zeon, I stand before you. For the sovereignty of the space colonists that Zeon Daikun envisioned, Neo-Zeon stands at a new juncture. Join me, and together, let us fight for the glory of our people in space.
This message at first throws the Federation officers for a loop. The message that Char has given was sent to all Zeon forces still abandoned on Earth, that they are to honorably retreat into space and return home. Even though, from what Serrana said, he plans to attack the Earth in the future. Why would the Zeons leave if they've been attacking them on Earth already from the countless remnant holdouts that still remain? These forces have seized territory and raided key facilities. They don't even know who to believe when it comes to this, Serrana or Char. However, Sinclair tells them something that he, Char, and the Zeon hardliners as a whole have already declared prior to this point, that Serrana Karn has no authority over the forces of Zeon, that her ministry and those who serve her were entirely dismissed after Char returned to their ranks. What she is doing now is simply an act to spread distrust as Char Aznabel declares an honorable withdrawal from the planet for all the Zeon forces still down here. At the end of this secretive meeting, as Serrana is waiting for the Federation's verdict, the Federation officers enter the room with Sinclair in tow. Serrana is stricken with fear. Her heart stops at the sight of him with the Federation soldiers, himself even telling them that she is to be taken back into space, where she is to face punishment for these rogue actions to destabilize their honorable withdrawal from Earth. Serrana is in shock, but is forced to comply under the threat of harm. They take her to the central runway, where a Gao transport waits to take her away, the vehicle that brought Sinclair to this facility provided to him by Torr. However, just as they set foot onto the ramp, a speeding car pulls up to the transport, with General Manov brutally bandaged from his broken ribs, ordering all of the guards to let her go. The officers, upon asking why, Manov fully explains the truths he's been told by Serrana, and the personal accounts of the cadets. He explains that Sinclair is the man who has been pursuing them. He himself is responsible for the deaths of countless Federation officers, and the deaths of many civilians back at the Odessa Academy. With Serrana being aware of Torr's scheming behavior within the Zeon remnants on Earth, Manov knows that Sinclair has no doubt been orchestrating these attacks on all of these Federation bases with the help of General Torr, who's been using this crisis himself as a means of expanding his Zeon remnants' territory and distracting the Federation as the vast bulk of the Zeon forces begin to leave the planet in secret. Colonel Newman and all of the remnant forces that Sinclair had rallied to help him in his assassination mission are all subordinates of Torr, and this act to send Serrana back into space is nothing but a thinly veiled ruse as a means of silencing her. This very quickly spirals into chaos, though, as the jig is soon up for Sinclair, and another massive battle breaks out in the heart of EFF-controlled territory. Sinclair's mobile suit team that destroyed the Academy, along with Torr's forces that seized Algiers, begin an all-out assault on the Federation base. However, despite the intense numbers of Zeon machines they possess, to their surprise, this attack on the Federation military HQ doesn't exactly go well for them. Raisa, Adel, and the cadets sortie into battle again, and this time with the help of the entire EFF garrison force of the base. The Federation heroes actually succeed in defending the facility from the onslaught of Gaplants, Gaffs, Dom Pluses, Goblins, and even Sinclair's Bretta. They all succeed in this battle. They're even met by two more of Gary and Leopard's old war buddies who've even joined in the fight to help avenge their fallen squad member, these being two Federation pilots by the names of Nip and Wiseman. In this battle, Gerald Sinclair's Bretta is heavily damaged beyond repair, but the man still escapes in the end, and their attempt to attack the base is thwarted by the base's complement of Jim 3s and Jagans. After the battle is over, the Federation officers, with a little convincing from Manov, apologize for falling for this ploy. Serrana explains to them in order for all of this madness to come to an end, they have to go to the heart of this earthbound crisis. Torr, the current leader of the Zeon remnant hardliners on Earth, no doubt sees that his time is up when it comes to his control over Europe. Despite the word being sent out and many Zeon forces now being mobilized to leave the planet, the man's opportunism and corruption must be stopped before he spreads it to the rest of Zeon. He plans to leave with his forces into space, and luckily, thanks to Serrana's knowledge, she knows exactly where he's hiding out. The forces of the Elnido and EFF mobilize. Their mission now is to stop his HLVs from having a chance to escape. They have very little time though, as his base of operations is currently located in the heart of northern Sweden, and this attack was no doubt a diversion to keep the Federation off his tail. It'll be incredibly difficult for them to catch up to him in time. However, this time, the heroes are prepared. Now, I'm going to tell you something I realized very late into my recording, and it's honestly something huge, and it has to do particularly with Brigadier General Manov. Now, there's probably a little question being asked in the back of your head when it comes to him. Why was it that Serrana Karn reached out to this man specifically? Why General Manov? And yes, I think the answer has to do with the uniform he bears. Aside from being stated that the man is part of the Federation's pro-peace faction within the military, why would a meeting between Serrana Karn and this man can be seen by Char Aznable and the hardliners as such a serious problem. So much of a problem that they had to send Gerald Sinclair to kill her specifically. Because, keep in mind, if you've read Walpurgis Eve, she's been targeted for assassination by the hardliners before. Why wouldn't Char just have another random assassin go kill her? Why send Sinclair? And I think it has to do with who Manov is. The rank of Brigadier General in the EFF holds another meaning within the military, as the rank of Brigadier General is actually another term in the Federation's hierarchy to distinguish the rank of Commodore. Brigadier General and Commodore hold the same rank and positions of power, thus the ranks are technically the same. Now, why does this rank matter? Well, Commodore is a rank that has been given to 3 other characters within this entire era of the UC. Murray Kristoff, shown in Gundam Walpurgis, Jamatov Hyman, founder of the Titans, Commodore being the original rank he bore during Operation Stardust, as well as Commodore Blex Forer from Zeta Gundam. Now, Manov has been involved with Londo Bell since the beginning of its formation. However, he himself is not its leader, as that role is filled by Commander Bright. So, why is it that the Federation listens and immediately follows his word when he explains the situation involving Serrana to the EFF higher-ups? It's because he holds a higher moral sway in the military than they do. But how? Keep in mind, with the Torr being shown as this high-ranking Zeon presence in Europe, despite being a major threat, the Earth Federation forces in Europe don't go after him. It's implied that the man has shady deals with everyone, meaning that the Federation, knowing their track record, were totally and fully willing to sacrifice Serrana for their own greed when it comes to their connections with the Torr. This all changes, though, the moment that Manov appears. Why is that? Well, this is the Federation military post-Grips War. The corrupt officers are fully aware that this man holds the ability to end them. But if this man holds that amount of authority, what has this man done to distinguish himself to be capable of wielding this level of power? And I think I know the answer. If the Federation Commodore Blex Forer was the man responsible for creating the HGUC, and this man holds that same strong moral code and distinguishes himself with a unique color of uniform, just as Blex did within the HGUC, what did this man create himself? The answer? I think it's Karaba. Now, Hayato Kobayashi was the military commander of Karaba. However, it's implied by every bit of lore we get when it comes to that faction that he himself wasn't its particular founder. Karaba as a faction holds the same higher level of political and moral authority over the standard EFF on Earth as the HGUC does in space. But we never see or hear about the person who created it. And if you look at Char's plans to take over Neo Zeon, if he kicked out Serrana Karn, he could have just sent anyone to go kill her if he needed her dead. But instead, he sent Sinclair, one of his closest confidants. And why is that? Probably because she went to the one person in the Federation who would actually screw up Char's plans for Earth. Hence, why he sent Sinclair to do it personally, the one man he would trust most to silence her. Now, what's my basis for this, if all of this is going off the fact that Manov is just a Federation officer with a special uniform? Well, you're going to see very soon why it is I believe this new theory of mine. The cadets all board the Elnido. Manov himself hands command of the ship fully over to Kelly. Burner, Orvis, Senri, and Doug are all given more Mark II B types. Serrana is once again given the Zeta 7C, and for this particular battle, Raisa Crescent and Adel Arishem have both been given something huge by Manov. 2 powerful suits he knows will be essential in busting down the enemy gates and taking down Torr's forces once and for all. Adel Arishem is given a new model of Double Zeta Gundam, one of the massive Double Zeta Siegfrieds featured in Revival of Zeon. Side note, just as the Zeta 7C is a more anime-accurate redesign of Kondo Zeta, the very same treatment is given to the Double Zeta Siegfried, and honestly, I really like it since its proportions are much more palatable, and makes the suit feel all more in line with the standard Double Zeta affair when it comes to the suit's design. But as for Raisa, as once again she is the best pilot out of the bunch and is technically still the squad leader of the cadets, Raisa Crescent is given something just as, if not more special, than Adel's unit, one of the very first refined Zeta Gundams, the RGZ-91AO, Refined Zeta Gundam Advanced Operation Type, the Re-GZ. This Re-GZ is actually quite special, as it's not a stock unit. The unit has extra added armor and powerful added leg boosters. But not only that, if you look at the suit's ID code, this unit can be seen as being part of the same lineage as the Re-GZ, yes, the one from Moon Gundam. And if you look at the line art from the game manual, this Re-GZ can actually fully transform. And finally, Manov himself, despite being injured, takes command of another vessel. And surprisingly, it's a vessel we've seen before. One that lost its captain during the first Neo-Zeon War. Parked at this base for almost 4 years since the Battle of Dublin, Brigadier General Manov takes command of the Audumla. Yes, not just a random Garda-class transport, but the actual Audumla itself. Do you see the connection now that this man might just be Karaba's original founder? Who else would command this ship? The original mobile command center of the forces of Karaba, the only ship that aided in the evacuation of Dublin during the colony drop, has its captain now teaming up with the one and only person in Haman Karn's court who truly opposed the Dublin colony drop. Do you see how mind-melting the lore implications this freaking DOS game has? This story, despite being so generic, needs a modern manga adaptation. Get the guy who did Walpurgis. I don't care if the manga has all of the same plot contrivances. This story deserves to see the sun again. Adel, once again, is very apprehensive about being given this massive war weapon, but he's with Raisa on this one, and the two are going to stick it out together to the end. AWAC Nemos and Jim 3s encounter Torr's forces first, being obliterated just as they spot the launch sites. Turns out, Torr has mobilized a massive force to intercept him. Not just Gaplants and Sturmjägers this time. Zanzibar transport carriers and Gao assault carriers are being sent out to fight them. The battle then erupts days later on the icy fields of northern Sweden. Mobile suit forces from both Zeon and the Federation clash on the massive frozen tundra as HLVs launch throughout the frozen wastes, beginning to take off. Leopard, Nip, and Wiseman lead the cadets, along with 3 other mobile suit squads, their Jim 3s and Nemos deploying to meet Torr's forces out in the open with the Mark IIB types. However, as this battle grows, we see what it is that Torr has up his sleeve when it comes to his mobile suit forces, and what he's willing to use to defend his personal assets. The cadets, along with Serrana, spot the shadow of it as the thing tramples a small forest in the snow, the massive battle still erupting around the HLV sites. It stands silhouetted against one of the massive HLV carriers, a retrofitted model of Zeon mobile armor, one not seen since the days of the 1-year war. A Big Zam. Not the Big Zam, but a Big Zam. The Big Zam L-type, Torr himself piloting it. Now, aside from it being a Big Zam, and all of the continuity issues that it could spur, I'm going to bring up a little issue I had with the fan novella, something I feel kinda might have gotten lost in my attempts to translate it. You see, in the fan novella of Advanced Operation, at some point during my translations of it, something got lost, and I don't understand how, because Torr uses the Big Zam to fire a megaparticle beam cannon shot so precise and at such a range that it hits the base in Germany from Sweden. Make of that what you will. As the Federation and Zeon forces clash in and around the launch sites, Serrana takes Adel and Raisa to go in front of Torr, but as they attempt to do battle with the massively reconstructed mobile armor, Sinclair makes his last-ditch effort to defeat Serrana, jetting out into the frozen wastes, ambushing Jim 3s as it darts out from their exposed flank. Gerald Sinclair, after his Bretta was damaged beyond repair in his failed attack on the EFF headquarters, has now been equipped with something more heavy-duty, if you will. One of the extremely rare and extremely powerful PMX-003, the O2s. Serrana engages Sinclair in a vicious duel, the two suits clashing violently on the frozen tundra. Serrana and Sinclair having a massive new type level ideological debate with each other as their machines collide. I like to consider this battle as a spiritual rematch between the Zeta and the O, as well as Serrana and Shirako's echoes taking the form of this massive Neo-Zeon built monstrosity. As for Sinclair, this entire fight and his choice of mobile suit just emphasizes what he is in the end, a puppet of larger figures. During their duel, Sinclair's the O2 is heavily damaged and left smoking, and in the end, we finally learn the truth about the beef that Sinclair and Serrana share with one another, and it's really just more or less Sinclair's beef with her. For all these years, Sinclair's entire motivation to fight for Zeon has been centered around his hatred for the Federation, who he believes killed his father after the Granada Treaty was signed. But during his fight with Serrana, Serrana tells him the truth that he's been denied and the truth that he has largely chosen to ignore in the face of all of this turmoil. That is, that it wasn't the Federation that killed his father, but the Zeon forces themselves. Not only that, it was the very people who he now fights alongside, the Zeon hardliners, the very same people under the Zabbies who allowed Marlene Karn, Serrana's eldest sister, to die in captivity at the end of the war. They are the very people that now rally under Char's banner, people like Torr, and they are the very same people that he is choosing to fight alongside. He doesn't even realize that he's being lied to and used as a pawn. But, as this reveal is made known, the resulting clash of new type willpowers and earth-shattering revelations for Sinclair results in the mutual destruction of both his The O2 and Serrana's Zeta Gundam getting caught in the blast, bringing an end to Gerald Sinclair's story, himself dying in the explosion. However, despite this moment being so epic, this is not the end. As the whole duel between these two legends unfolds, Raisa and Adel speed around the massive Big Zam in the snow, firing powerful mega beam shots and fighting with all their might. The two Gundams engaging the Zeon Remnant leader in a 2v1 brawl with his massive mass production type mobile armor. The old man tries to obliterate Federation suits left and right with all of his Big Zam's weapons. He even manages to kick Adel's Double Zeta Gundam with one of his leg claws, shattering the Double Zeta to pieces as he sends it flying into the ground. As this fight goes on, and Raisa and Adel get their butts handed to them, Torr goes full-blown Sith Lord, as these young pilots and the Federation forces are giving this old gross geezer a run for his money. However, despite having ordered his forces to withdraw in the HLVs, he despises this entire order from Char to have the Zeon forces flee the planet. Not because he thinks the plan to go back into space is seen as dishonorable, or that he thinks it's a waste to abandon the territory, but solely just because he really likes being a rich and powerful warlord. In truth, Torr, for being stuck with Zeon for so long, cares little for Char and his people's aims. Being so old and having been a member of the Zabby Circle back in his day, he only really cares about conquest and the power that comes with brokering off captured territory and stolen resources with the enemy. The man for the longest time has been using his vast network of Zeon Remnant connections as a means of making shady deals with the Earth Federation government. Also, he can get extremely rich off of the territory controls and the illegal mining operations his people conduct in the territories he and his forces control. To dumb it down for you, this man basically salvaged Makube's mining enterprise and made it his own, and was making deals with the Federation to keep it going, basically selling out his own people so he could get rich off the places that they would take over. However, despite this man's cartoonishly sinister aims and his extremely powerful mobile armor laying waste to the Federation forces, through the power of teen romance, Adel and Raisa managed to actually defeat Torr, Adel and his busted Double Zeta blasting the Big Zam with the unit's high mega cannon, and Raisa unleashing a missile barrage from her Re-GZ that kills Torr in the explosion. Over with Serrana though, the duel has ended. Sinclair is finally killed in the blast when his The O2 is destroyed, Serrana landing several rifle rounds and saber slashes on the machine's massive form. The blast consumes him, Sinclair in his final moments lamenting the revelation that he was just a pawn for Char Aznable in the end. As for Serrana, by the skin of her teeth, survives, But her Zeta is lost. She climbs out of the wreckage, walking out into the snow. Torr has been defeated, but this event has traumatized her beyond belief. Not only that, despite her actions to try and stop Char's war from breaking out, so many innocent people were sacrificed to try and prevent it. Conflict is something that Serrana has always been trying to avoid, and despite choosing the side of good, the side of these young cadets who were simply trying to survive this crisis, she ultimately vanishes into the snow to continue her mission in hopes of gaining the one thing her people need most: peace. However, we Gundam fans know the tragic truth behind this desire, and the result of Char's aims. In the coming months, it will only continue to escalate. The days will come of Char's revival of Zeon, and time is short, but the world must be ready for what he has planned. Now, holy shit, this was really fun. I thought I'd need a whole video series to do this, but in all honesty, this story just needed one big video. Now, this actually isn't the end of the game. We still have the rest of the ending to go over, so let's do that right now. As the smoke clears and all the cadets recover from the massive final battle with Sinclair and Torr's forces, we get a nice little conclusion to our cadets' little story. Every single one of them went on to do what it is they dreamt about. Senri got his pilot's license, Orvis and Burner joined the EFF, and Doug and Adel would go on to be members of the Earth Federation's Maritime Search and Rescue Services. Captain Kelly, the captain of the Elnido, would resign and return the ship to the Federation, the young captain choosing to settle down with Claire Brownie after the events of their journey, and the two would go on to get married in the end. The story ending as the former cadets all gather for a party celebrating their first anniversary, the very same day as the official outbreak of Char's Rebellion. But as for Raisa, this adventure for her was extremely taxing, but nonetheless, she would eventually join the Earth Federation forces. Someday soon, she might even go off to join Londo Bell like she dreamt of, her story most likely ending as she goes off to join Manov's fleet. It's somewhat implied, at least from the dialogue I translated from the novella and some of the cutscenes, that Raisa Crescent might have been one of the Gym 3 pilots helping in the pushing of Axis. Nice little nod, and honestly, I like the idea of her being there with Amuro to help save the planet in the end. It's a sweet little thing to think about. However, just as the game comes to an end, we get to see Adel and Raisa professing their emotions for one another, the two making the choice to one day live happily ever after. As for Serrana, we don't know where she went. This is currently the last point in the timeline that she will ever appear. However, we do know that she survived the events of this whole ordeal, but at the cost of her rank, her position within Zeon, and the reputation her family name still manages to hold on to. However, she still lives, her footprints walking from the shattered remains of her Zeta Gundam as the game comes to an end. Now, why was it that I wanted to cover such an obscure and insignificant story? Well, it goes all the way back to what I set out for with this channel, to cover the obscure. Advanced Operation, Return of Zeon, and A Year of War are all super obscure pieces of media when it comes to modern Gundam, but the thing that impresses me so much about them is that they still get referenced to, even though they're never talked about. This game was actually the very first piece of media to introduce Serrana Karn and Gerald Sinclair. We wouldn't see them till almost a decade later in Char's deleted affair. It's amazing that something so small sparked Sunrise to actually include her as a legitimate character in future projects and lore solely because she featured in a super primitive, super old video game that no one's even played. And yes, this game was on floppy disk. That's how old Serrana Karn is as a Gundam character. She has been around since the earliest days of home computers, and despite being around for so long, she is being constantly referenced to, and to this day has managed to carve out a tiny little space for herself amongst the titans of other UC characters. And honestly, this story, despite being so short and having such a small amount of screen time for her, and honestly character development, it's honestly my favorite rendition of her character as a whole. Finding this game online, emulating it, and translating it is nearly impossible, at least by my skill set. However, luckily there is a way we can experience it as fans without having to dive so hard into getting this game to work on modern hardware, and that's with the help of the Advanced Operation fan novella written by Sanko Inoue. The book I myself had translated and you can find on my channel to listen to as a series of AI-dubbed audio tracks. And yes, before you go in and comment talking about the translation, I did in fact get the author's permission to translate it. It took a while, but I managed to do it. Nonetheless, I will have links down below to the novella for you guys to find, read, and experience for yourselves in your free time. Now, let's talk about this little bit of fun channel news. You may have made it through this video wondering what this big announcement is that I mentioned at the beginning. Well, my channel has been around for about 3 years at this point, and so far I've been working my butt off to make this channel every bit as better as it can be for being a solo YouTuber. But now, I feel like it's my time to give back to you guys. That's right, I'm doing my very first channel giveaway. Yeah, I'm doing a giveaway. Now, you might be asking, what am I giving away? How do I enter? Guys, why are you talking like a crazy person? What is all this? Well, the rules are actually extremely simple to enter. All you need to do is be subscribed to my channel, and you have to leave a comment in the description of this video. That's right. All you have to do to enter this giveaway is be subscribed to Gaius, and you have to leave a comment on this advanced operation video. Now, what is it that I am giving away? Well, since it's currently fall and the holidays are coming around the corner, I felt it was appropriate to give you guys a gift this year. That gift is Gunpla! That's right. If you enter into this giveaway, you'll be entered to get a chance to win one of 3 Gundam model kits I'll be giving away for Christmas. All 3 of these models being referenced in some way in this advanced operation video. The first kit being the high-grade Universal Century Zeta Gundam Revive, the next being the HGUC Gundam Double Zeta, and finally the slightly bigger but also amazing HGUC Re-GZ. Once again, if you're interested in entering for a chance to win one of these 3 kits, all you've got to do is be subscribed to Gaius and leave a comment down below in this video about something you learned in this video that you found interesting. It doesn't really matter what it is, heck, you could even make fun of me. Nonetheless, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you share it with others. See if anyone you know is interested in entering for a chance to win one of these fine model kits. I hope you check out the original fan novella, because the guy who wrote it put a lot of effort into it, and I hope you enjoy the content that I make, because I really enjoy making it for you. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later. And this is Gaius, signing off. I'll see you next time.